this is Elaine from Antelope Beads. Glad to be here today. I am coming to you from an undisclosed location in Ohio, and where I am is really pretty interesting, so I've chosen just to go straight to the beading mat here. Glad everyone could be here today. And today we're going to talk about bridge beads. These are really interesting little components. They have a hole for leather, beading wire, whatever on one end, and on the other end they have a opening for the leather, so you can make designs with little beaded components. Whoopsie daisy. This is my one that I didn't even glue. I just tried to quickly put it together, but you can make little beaded components or pieces of beaded work and then add leather to the other end. So they come in like one hole. Here's a 10 millimeter with 3 holes. There's a 5 millimeter with 2 holes. There is a 20 millimeter that has a bunch of holes. They have all kinds of options there. So little tricky to do some of the finishing, so I'm going to go through some of the options in that regard, and here we go. Okay, so my very simplest option is that I want to put this little flat crazy lace bead in the middle of, hello Pammy, how are you? Okay, I'm glad to be back. Okay, so I want to put this little component between these pieces, and this is for 3 millimeter leather, and then I'll add some leather to the end. So the obvious thing you could do is start by just putting a crimp on one end, and I'm going to show you, hello Sandy, I'm going to show you why this kind of doesn't usually work too well. So I've got a crimp, and I'm going to really smush it hard on one end. I don't need to use the crimping pliers because this is going to be inside of the component. And here we go. I'm going to thread that crimp bead into the bridge bead. Here we go. Let's see if that's, there we go. So it's just going to go right inside of there, and then the leather will, so the crimp bead is hidden inside of there, and then the leather will still go inside of there. And then I will string on my beads. I've got a little tiny rubber O-ring and a flat crazy lace coin bead, and then back through the other beads. So this is what I want, so I can put the leather on either side here. So to crimp the other side though, here's my crimp bead. And the trouble is I can't really get much of anything in the way of pliers down there. So if I'm going to pick up my crimp bead, and I'm going to pull just as hard as I can on that other crimp, smush it, and then I can trim off the beading wire, and you'll see what the issue is here. So even as hard as I pulled on that, there's some space, there's some gap there. So one of the options I actually entertained, and I know it would work, is to fill in that gap by adding a few jump rings, but that's not what I want. So here is the other alternative. So I'll go ahead and just cut this beading wire off, and I'm going to now use a piece of 1 millimeter or half millimeter, actually half millimeter leather. Got a little tiny piece of half millimeter leather here, and I am going to put my beads on the leather. Okay, here we go. We got that rubber O-ring, the coin bead. Okay, there we go, got those on the leather, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the leather in either end of the bridge bead. And then we use glue to secure, we're going to use glue to secure the 3 millimeter leather in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing here. Now, that's a lot of stuff to stick in one little tiny opening. I've got the half millimeter leather and my 3 millimeter flat leather. So some of the tricks are, first of all, I can flatten this half millimeter leather with my flat nose pliers, and then I can also sort of work with the end of the 3mm leather. I'm going to cut that off. So some of the things I can do are, a lot of times I like to just cut off a little point on either side, okay, like that. And then I can also flatten this leather. Okay, there we go. So I've got this leather flattened and cut to a point. And now if I get it set up so I've got my flat piece of leather inside of the bridge bead along with the round leather, it just goes right in there. Now you notice I did not trim off that leather yet. You know, would glue this in, and then I'm going to go back and trim that tail. And that's because it gives the glue a little bit more of a surface with respect to the 1/2mm leather to adhere to. So that's going to give me a nice, tight, good looking finish for that bracelet. And then all I need to do is size it and pop on a clasp, and I'm good to go. Okay, so that's the really simple option, and just really nice. I mean, you've got your little silver accents built right in there with the bridge beads, and really like it. So the second one I'm going to do is with the 3mm whole bridge bead for 10mm leather, and I've got 2 pieces of 1/2mm leather. I'm actually going to, on one side it's going to be super easy because this hole is really kind of long and thin, so I can actually without too much trouble get 2 pieces of that. As I say that, of course it doesn't go, but I can get 2 pieces of that 5.5mm leather through the bridge bead. And let's see, there we go. Okay, there we go. So that's going to go in here, and I want 2 pieces, and I'll show you why in just a second. This is kind of a fun little trick. Okay, and I'm just going to work it a little bit. There it goes. Okay, so I'm going to kind of get up to the halfway point with these 2 pieces. I really don't care how long they are right at this point. We start with, you know, maybe about a foot at the most. And then I'll come back, and I'm going to then, so they're coming out, this is the front of the bridge bead where the beads are going to go, and this is the part where the leather is going to go into. So in this case, what I'll do is just secure one end right off the bat by just making a loop here. So I'm going to come back out, and I'm going to skip that center hole. Just because you have a hole in this case doesn't mean you have to use it. Usually I have to use every hole. There goes one piece, and it's a little trickier coming from the inside of the bridge bead, but we can get it without too much trouble. I'm just working that leather and kind of making sure it's at a point so it'll go through. Come on, come on. You are going to come through. Sometimes you have to talk to your leather. I'm going to trim this off just a little bit, and I am going to just really insist that there it goes. There we go. So now I've got this loop here, and when I pull down the ends, the loop is just going to go right inside the clasp. So I don't even have to worry about what's going to happen on that end. Okay, so now I just want to do a little bit of a weave thing. I mean, here's a case where you've got a bunch of leather strands, and you can do really kind of a variety of macrame type things here. This is really simple. I'm using some 6mm clay cult beads, and I'm going to start by taking 2 of the strands and putting a clay cult bead over those 2 strands. It's 1/2mm leather, so that is absolutely not going to be a problem. I'm going to pull this all the way up there. There we go. That looks good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread those 2 strands out, and I'm going to bring these 2 strands over into the middle, and I'm going to thread my second clay cult bead onto the strands that were on the outside. So I'm just sort of alternating inside and outside. Okay. Clay cult beads, of course, are handmade, so sometimes the leather is a little bit of a tighter fit than others. Okay, and I can mess around with this, but I think I'll just try another bead instead here. Okay, there we go. There's just going to be a little bit of variation in the hole size, and that's just something we, you know, so, whoops, okay, learn to live with. We can do all our tricks in terms of pulling the leather and flattening it, and this is really gonna go here. There we go, almost. Really want you to go through here. Okay, so I'm twisting the leather now to see if I can get it to go through. Here it comes. There it comes. Let's see, I can get one side of it. Come on, it is a pretty tight fit in this bead for some reason. Okay, see if I can get the other strand through. You know what, I'm gonna just try another one. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm pulling these strands out. And hello, Sonia. And let's go for 3 here. This one's probably going to go without any trouble whatsoever. Okay. There we go. I can just feel it's going to go through without any problem. Okay. Come on. Don't mean to waste your time working this one bead through, but I want to show you what this looks like. You know, this is sort of not expected that this was going to be my issue today. I always have an issue, and I didn't think this was going to be it. Okay, there we go. There it goes. There we go. Okay, all right, so now I've got this. Okay, so I've got this little bead right up here, and what's actually kind of nice, believe it or not, about the clay cult beads being a little snug is they're going to really stay in place. So again, I will spread those outside strands, bring the 2 inside strands inside, and string another bead over both of those strands. That goes right on. There we go. And I just keep working this pattern. I think I have pretty well come to the conclusion that you're better off with a smaller beaded component in the middle than a bigger one. So okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and do 3 beads for right now. So on the other side, what I'll do is take the 2 strands that are on one side, and I'm going to put them through the hole of the bridge bead. Here we go, coming out there. Okay, and then I will do the same thing on the other side. Okay. And then I'm ready to size my bracelet and glue that leather in. Okay, here we go. There, come on through. There we go. Okay, so I'll just take a second here, and I would, you know, adjust these beads so they sit nicely, and the leather is, you know, once the leather gets positioned, it's pretty well going to stay in place. But if you want to, you can, you'll hit those little junctures with a little bit of glue. But that's a kind of a cute little centerpiece right there. And I wanted to use this leather for the outside. I think it goes really well with the clay cult beads, but I really feel like I needed to have gotten a 1/2 millimeter metallic leather for the leather part of this. So I'm going to not glue this one right now. But again, I would do the same thing on this side that I did with the 1 millimeter. I would leave these ends here, flatten them if I can, and I will, you know, trim off the ends of this leather and flatten it, and you know, it will go in without any trouble. And then I can go back and trim that 1 millimeter leather from the back. So there's that one. Okay, and the third one, so when I first made a sample, I decided I needed to use all the holes. So I used I think this was a 1 millimeter leather, and I just strung beads on, and I didn't even fill up all the leather. Because I used the sea glass beads, and they're really tight fit on the 1 millimeter leather, you know, once I position them, they're just kind of there. So I kind of did like a little floating design here. 2 things on this one. I like it. I think I would have made the beaded part shorter. I don't think it gives enough credit to the leather. You know, the emphasis is strictly on the beads. It's almost like the leather's a afterthought, and part of the beauty of this is to be able to combine the two. So if I did that again, I would do a shorter version of that. So here I've got the 20 millimeter bridge beads. They've got 7 holes, and I'm only going to go ahead and string beads on using 3 of the holes. I've got some wood beads, I've got some crazy lace agate here. I'm using tiger ebony. I think, believe it or not, the tiger ebony with the crazy lace agate really looks good. And in fact, at some point I could recommend that different stones look good with different types of wood. The rosewood looks super with amazonite. Really, really nice. So, okay, I've got a piece of 1 millimeter waxed cord, and in this case, I've got a lot of room inside of here. I'm going to go ahead and just start it with a knot. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and just tie an overhand knot, and I am going to trim it off because it's probably easier to do it now rather than later. Okay, and I'm going to put it through the outside hole here, from inside to the outside, so the knot is inside the bridge bead. There we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, so there's that to start with. And then I've kind of figured out the pattern on this ahead of time. So I'm going to start with a little rice-shaped bead, and then a couple of the crazy lace agate. These are 8 millimeter rounds, and there we go. And then of course I have to put a spacer bead in because I just really like my spacers. And then I'll go ahead and just put one of these little rondelles on. Okay, this is what I have so far. Okay, and I'm just going to repeat that on the other side. And here we go. Oop, I forgot my spacer bead. Okay, and this is just a little quirk of mine. If I'm using metal components, you know, I like to kind of carry a little bit of metal into the rest of the design. I just think it gives the design a sense of unity. Okay, here we go. Here we go. And the 1 millimeter cord actually goes through the gemstones without really much trouble at all. Okay, so I got that. There we go. So now I'm going to come through the front, the front of the bridge bead through that outside hole. Some of the holes every once in a while are just a little smaller. This one, of course, is a little smaller, so I flatten my cord a little bit. I'm going to pull it through. And in this case, I'm just going to string it. I'm not going to use any gap. So now I want to come into the middle hole. So I'll get my cord end. I'm going to come in through the inside, and I'm going to double check, and I'm through that middle hole. And now I'm going to string on another little piece of pattern here. Let's see, I think I'll do this. Well, okay, this. So I've got another rondelle bead on the cord. Now this time I'm going to go ahead and use a 10 millimeter crazy lace agate, spacer bead, and this nice big round oval beads. If you all have not worked with this wood, I'm telling you, you got to see it up close. It is just got such a beautiful finish, beautiful grain. It is not, I don't know how to say it. It is just not what you expect from wood beads, and I think the wood just pairs beautifully with the Dakota gemstone beads. There we go. Okay, so here's another spacer. Okay, and another 10 millimeter, and another little rondelle bead. There we go. And I'm going to come now through the front center hole. Okay. And I'm purposely pretty close, but I kind of wanted this outside strand just a tad longer than the inside strand, so it sort of arches around the inside strand. They don't really kind of bump into each other, and I think I'm pretty well where I want to be. So to finish that up, I'm going to do the same thing on the outside hole. I'm going to come through the back to the front. Okay. And come on. You have to, oh, now see, this hole is really pretty small right there. That last hole, just a little smaller. So I'm really going to have to just take that cord and flatten it with my fingernail. And try, oh, there it goes, right through there. Once it was flattened, it just went right in. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then I would string these beads on. I'm going to do that really quick just to make sure you kind of know what the finished piece looks like. And I've got my rice bead, 2 8mm crazy lace beads. I've got a spacer, rondelle, or saucer. I'm not sure which one is called, rondelle. Okay, and 2 crazy lace beads and a rice bead. Okay, and I am going to finish the other side. If I try to tie a knot, and I got to tell you, I spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out the best way to finish with these different materials, and this is going to go through that one. Here we go. Okay, and so, you know, tying a knot, and now I can see that it's really kind of arched out the way I want it to be. That's what I want that to look like. And so to finish this one, I can do a couple of different things. One is I can trim this cord off and kind of just lay it down, you know, on the inside of the bead here. Or I can do the same thing, you know, I've been doing all along, and that is to just leave that cord in, glue the leather in, and then trim the cord from the other side. And I just, you know, again, the glue holds the clasp in all the time, so we shouldn't be worried about, you know, the fact that the glue is also going to hold this little end piece in. So that is, and then I'm going to finish it with this 20mm flat cord, and I just think, really like the way that piece looks. That's going to be a nice looking piece. So any questions, any comments, anything else you want to know about bridge beads at this point? And if not, next week we are going to talk about a bunch of 2mm components, and I'm going to share some of my designs that I'm very successful with, using the big hole gemstones with 2mm leather, and I hope you'll come back for that. And thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to visit antelopebeads.com. Make sure you're getting those emails, because they come out with spectacular deals every day. And I will see you next week. Goodbye. Oh, Pammy, I will use a 20mm flat clasp, flat magnetic clasp. I actually probably would use a smooth one rather than this bumpy one, but you know, something like that. I'm going to use a 20mm flat magnetic clasp. For those of you that there's a video on our YouTube channel about just about making leather bracelets, but you know, when you size a bracelet that has the center component is sort of set, you know, what you do is you decide how long you want your leather to be. Typically for women it'd be like 7 inches. So I'm going to set my ruler right at that 3.5 inch point, and then I'm going to measure down to, you know, 0 inches on one side and 7 inches on the other side, and then cut the leather, and that way my center piece stays centered, and that's the way that works. So okay, well, thanks again, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.